Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Limitless Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Parnell, and before we get started, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things you need to on social media to help this podcast impact people and build leaders. And folks, today I'm honored and humbled to share a great guest with you, another incredible leader. He introduced himself to me as Bob, but I will say he is General Robert Neller, 4-star general of the Marine Corps. General Neller, thank you so much for being on.
Great to be with you. Looking forward to the discussion.
I am too, and I'm excited for our audience to get to know you. One big reason is because we have an incredible event coming up. I say we, but my newest podcast sponsor, TechMetric, has an incredible event in April 9th through the 11th in Houston, Texas, Tectonic. And you are one of the keynote speakers, in fact, the opening keynote at Tectonic. And I want you to share with our audience what your session, what your speech, what your keynote will be. But before we do, share with the audience who you are, what you do, and how you do it. Promotive is the recruiting engine dedicated to helping modern automotive shops hire better and grow stronger. With deep aftermarket experience, they know shop operations, the technician talent market, and how transformative the right hire can be. Promotive runs a full, hands-on recruiting process. They find active and passive talent, screen candidates with intention, and guide everyone through a clean, professional hiring experience. The result is a pipeline of candidates who are aligned, prepared, and ready to contribute. Shops work with Promotive because they deliver consistency, clarity, and real results. They take on the heavy lifting so shops can stay focused on customers, operations, and growth. If your shop needs to hire or wants to build a better recruiting pipeline, visit gopromotive.com. Start a search, schedule a conversation, and see why so many shops trust Promotive to find the right technicians.
Well, I grew up in East Lansing, Michigan, and went off to college. And for a number of reasons, my original plan was to become an attorney, and it didn't work out. And I'd gone to officer candidate school the summer before my senior year. And the Marine Corps offered me a commission as an officer. And I figured I'd do that for 3 years and then figure out what I really wanted to do, because I wanted to marry this girl. And some things were happening in my life, and I needed a job. So that was my plan. And as my late father-in-law used to say, life is what happens when you're planning other stuff. I liked it. I liked the Marine Corps. I liked the idea. I'm probably a bit of an idealist, because the Marine Corps at that time was not really good. We're coming out of Vietnam, the beginning, the all-volunteer force, the quality overall. I mean, we had some really great Marines, don't get me wrong, but the overall quality was not anywhere near what it is today in our armed forces. But thought about getting out a couple of times, but no, my wife was supportive. She liked the life. We had our first child, and then, like things work out in your life. We had a second child, and we were moving, and for some reason I was getting promoted, and we traveled overseas, and, just became not what we did, but what we were. We're a Marine family. So, 10 years turns into 20, and 20 into 30, and then 30 into 40, and then getting ready to retire. And again, through kind of a series of coincidental events, I ended up getting nominated and confirmed to be the 37th Commandant of the Marine Corps from 2015 to 2019. So it was maybe the greatest honor of my life, a great privilege to lead 182,000 at the time Marines, and about 100,000 family members, and 40,000 Marines in the reserves deployed all over the world. It was challenging, not a lot of fun sometimes, but always rewarding. And you try to make things better, leave the place better than you found it, and people can decide whether I did that or not. But retired here to Texas, and been doing a number of different things, consulting, advising, teaching, speaking, just enough to keep me busy and stay out of the way of my wife, because she doesn't really need me around the house telling her what to do.
You mentioned that when you joined the Marine Corps, it wasn't exactly what it was today. Having spoken with you offline, I truly believe that we connect through authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. And having spoken with you offline, I know you won't say this, so I'll say it for you. You did play a massive role in making the Marine Corps what it is today in comparison to what it was 40 years ago. Can you speak to the listening audience on what it was like to be one man to lead thousands of people and what it was like to affect change from the top down?
Well, nobody does it by themselves. I mean, the leader is responsible and accountable for what a unit fails to do. And I had a great staff, had great people around me. I think one thing good leaders have to do is they got to pick good people. And I learned in my last job that, the secret sauce of the Marine Corps is not all the cool gear and the new stuff we get. It's, you got to go find really good people, good young men and women who are motivated and are willing to step up to the challenge. And then you got to make them into Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we do that pretty well. We find good people, and over the years we found better people, and we made them into Marines, made them understand that it's never about them. The mission and the organization come first. You have a heritage, you have a legacy, you have a history, and nobody wants to be the one who doesn't make the Marine Corps successful. Nobody wants to be the one that lets the team down. And it's not 100 over 100, but I think that's the culture. That's been inculcated in Marines for 250 years. We just had our 250th anniversary here on 10 November. So, as a commandant, you're kind of the spiritual leader, a service chief, whether they be the chief of staff of the Army, or the Air Force, or the chief of naval operations. Those individuals command no troops. You command nothing. You organize, train, and equip the force. You get funding for the force. And you're kind of the spiritual leader of the force, setting the tone for policy and things that you want to do as far as how the force is supposed to conduct itself, how it's supposed to behave, how it's supposed to operate. And, change is constant. Just like in business, change is constant. If you're not changing, you just, everybody hates change. We talked about that.
Yeah.
People hate change. They hate it almost as much as they hate the way things are today.
Yeah.
So doing nothing is really not it's not an acceptable course of action, as we would say. So, there's always things that get better. And, sometimes it's difficult. I mean, is it ever good enough? Maybe today it is, but tomorrow's another day. And I think the Marine Corps teaches you that, hey, you did great today, Marine. Well done. Thanks for your effort. Now tomorrow I know that you have more capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want more. And that can get people discouraged. I mean, sometimes you feel like, hey, is it ever good enough? But, you're in a competition, and going to war is kind of the ultimate competition. Because if you're not successful, you may not come home, let alone the strategic impact on your country. So, I think everybody, it's never about you. I mean, the Marine Corps also teaches you, hey, if you get injured or you're out of action, next person going to stand up, next person up. And everybody's expected to step up. You're always prepared to assume the role of the person ahead of you. And our history is replete with individuals who they found themselves unexpectedly in leadership roles, and they did it.
This episode is brought to you by Limitless Leadership, because great teams don't happen by accident. They're led on purpose. If you're tired of wearing all the hats, putting out fires, and wondering why your team won't step up, Limitless Leadership is for you. They help leaders transition from player to coach, who develop people and multiply impact through in-person or online leadership training like the Limitless Leadership Blueprint or their Roots to Results coaching method. Their services are designed to help you tap into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results and help you create safety and trust in order to provide clarity and direction. So if you're ready to stop managing chaos and start leading with purpose, head to limitlessleadership.co to book a complimentary discovery call today. Leadership grows faster in the right rooms. The auto repair industry is evolving, and the shops that win long-term aren't chasing every new trend. They're choosing what aligns, what works, and what lasts. Tectonic 2026 is where shop owners, advisors, and technicians come together to sharpen what actually moves the needle. Better leadership, better execution, and a healthier team culture. Whether you're leading the shop, managing the front counter, or turning wrenches in the bay, there's a place for you here. Tectonic is happening April 9th through the 11th in Houston, Texas. Tickets are on sale now, and Limitless Leadership podcast listeners can get $500 off standard pricing with code LIMITLESS500. Go to techmetric.com/tectonic. That's TEKTONIC, or use the link in the show notes.
it's a next man up mentality. Offline we talked about some sports. We talked about some college football specifically, and there's a quote that I heard Nick Saban say years ago. Nick Saban, legendary college football coach, he said something along the lines of, we don't practice so much that we can get it right. We practice so much that we can't get it wrong. And what I believe in as a leadership coach in our amazing industry is that we get to serve, lead, support, coach, train, and manage people in a way that when we're investing in every one of our team members, when that person goes and chooses to do something different, they're bettering their career for themselves and their family. It gives us an opportunity as a leader to applaud their departure because we played a role in helping them achieve that goal and that next destination for them. So when they leave, we get to applaud them, but we're not having to rebuild. We're simply having to reload because everyone is being poured into. You talked about being a spiritual leader. As your role as the Commandant, you are kind of looked at as that spiritual leader that what I hear you say is it's influence. John Maxwell says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And a question I ask every client of mine to ask himself is, does my team feel the weight of my title or the influence of my leadership? Let me ask you, for your role as a Commandant, someone who is leading from a place of massive influence, talk to the listening audience about what it looks like when we delegate authority, but you're still responsible for the outcome.
Well, everybody, as you get more senior, you become less and less intimately attached to everybody in the unit. I mean, when I was a lieutenant with like 35, 40 Marines, I knew every one of those Marines. I knew about their families. And I think that's important for a leader. I mean, you got to understand your folks. They're there. Yeah, they signed a contract. They're getting paid, but they joined the Marine Corps because they want to be Marines.
I'm going to pause real quick. Help me understand because you're absolutely right. It's important that we connect. Can you go deeper and explain and elaborate why is connection so important? Because a lot of the listening audience is leading people that are, I'd say, teams of 40 or less.
Yeah, I think everybody, I believe that the people that you work with, you call them your subordinates or your workforce or whoever. I think the most important thing is they have to believe that you actually have some care for them.
Yeah.
That you're committed to them. Because it's really, it's kind of counterintuitive. It's kind of intuitive. I want everybody in my organization to be successful. I'm there. I think the leader is the chief success officer.
Okay.
And if everybody in the organization, so I don't know what success for them is. It might be a bonus. It might just be a paycheck. Maybe they're raising a family. They got, as we get older, our parents get older. We have different issues. There's weddings, there's births. The leader's got to be aware of those things to the best of their ability. Mm-hmm. Because I think the people that you lead, they're curious about you, but I think you should be curious about them. They want to know about your family. They want to know what teams you like. They want to know what kind of car you drive. They want to know, because, and you can share that. And there is risk. There's always risk in doing stuff or not doing stuff. But I think as the Commandant, here I am. I had daily contact with the staff and the Marines there, but you travel around. I spent a lot of time on the road going around talking to Marines, telling them what was going on, telling them what the issues were, telling them what we were doing to try to solve them. And then we take questions. And some of the questions were pretty strategic. Some of them were pretty basic, like, hey, I don't like these boots, or how come we have these lousy things, or, how come I can't get parts, or whatever. What do you think about us? And you have this exchange, and I think you have to be there. You've got to be open to listen to them. Sometimes, people say, I want to hear what you have to say. I've met a lot of leaders that I didn't really believed that they wanted to hear what I had to say.
Sure.
I want to hear what you have to say, because if you don't know what people are thinking, you really don't get it. The hardest thing to do when you get significantly elevated above day-to-day contact with your people is I think, hey, what's the truth? Because our people, you ask people a question, I always thought this was odd. You ask, hey, what do you think about this? Well, do you want me to tell you the truth? Well, like, no, I want you to lie to me like everybody else does. Or, yes. And if you ever say, I try never to say that, because if somebody asks me a question, I'm going to tell them the truth.
Sure.
What else would I say? You ask me, obviously you want to know, you ask me what I think. Okay. Ask well, because, that's probably one of my strengths and one of my weaknesses as a younger officer, is because people would ask me that question that I actually believed that they wanted to know.
Well, you said it's one of your strengths, but maybe one of your weaknesses. And I would challenge that by saying it can be a weakness if that person
if your boss doesn't want to hear it, then, you be considered difficult, or you don't have tact, or you don't understand the big picture, and that was kind of the way I was like, well, you're kind of difficult. You can be cantankerous. And then I was leaving a job. I'd been a battalion commander, and the division commander, who also retired as a 4-star, and really smart guy. And I had asked to see him. Normally courtesy, when you leave to go to another command or you get orders, you want to pay an out call on your boss. So I kind of maybe arrogantly asked if I could speak with the division commander, who was like 3 levels above me. And I'll come see you. So we talk and we talk and we talk. And I had a list of things. This is the stuff. These are the things you need to work on, General. This is what I would do to improve this organization. And he listened patiently. Says, yeah, I hear you. We're working on that. Or no, I don't agree on that. Or let me explain to you why this is the way this is. And he went through the whole thing, and we got done. And I said, that's all I got. Thanks for your time, sir. And he said, well, I'll just tell you, you're probably in the X percent of all the commanders in the unit. I appreciate what you're doing. And he goes, don't ever change. And I was shocked, because I'd never had anybody tell me that the way I was okay.
That's powerful.
And so I said, okay. General Wilhelms says I don't have to change. So I'm not going to change. Which is why where I ended up there was no one more surprised than me.
Help me understand why that was so impactful for you.
You get told, you need to be more patient. You need to, because I wasn't being difficult to be difficult. I mean, everything I was doing, I thought, was to try to make that organization better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's always people in an organization. They're kind of outliers. Maybe they're a little different. They've got different views. They consider malcontents, or they complain. And sometimes they are. But if they're productive and their proposals are designed to make the unit or the organization more efficient, more effective, more profitable, and I think you need to listen to them.
Yeah.
And maybe you need to protect them, because a lot of times people below you will cut them off. They'll deny them an opportunity to speak. As a guy told me once, there's leaders in every organization. You just got to find out who they are. And it may not be the leader who's technically the leader.
Elaborate on that, if you don't mind.
I read a lot of history, and there's a famous book by a French author about these guys, the French army. They're in Vietnam, and they get captured after Dien Bien Phu, and they go back to France, and then France has a counterinsurgency in Algeria, and this guy gets put in charge of a brigade, and he's got an active duty unit and a reserve unit. And when he shows up, he's the new commander, and the reserve unit basically had mutiny. They didn't like their food. They didn't think they were being treated the same as the regular unit. They didn't think they had the right gear. And so they had actually arrested the 2 mutineers, 2 sergeants. So this guy, this is fictional, but I think it probably actually happened. So he asked to speak with them. Says, okay, I understand you guys are in charge of the mutiny. Tell me what your grievances are. So they run down the list of grievances. And he goes, okay, I can fix that, I'll fix that, I'll fix that, I'll fix that. I can't do anything about that right now, but this is what we'll work on that. Okay, are we good? And they go, yeah, we're good, Colonel. And he goes, oh, by the way, I recognize now that you are really the leaders in this unit, so I'm putting you in charge.
They're driving change.
They're driving change. And they had the courage of their conviction to stand up to the senior guy and voice their opinions on behalf of the rest of the organization.
Sure.
And so I thought that was a very compelling story, and I found it to be true that there's people in every unit or every organization or every business who are they're change agents. They could be considered malcontents or rabble rousers or just, always dissatisfied. And you get to a certain point, okay, somebody's got to make a decision. We got to move out. We can't be bitching about this stuff all the time. But I would encourage people to a point to listen to these folks. And you need to encourage them. I mean, when you go in the room and say, hey, has anybody got anything they want to say about this? And nobody says anything, that would make me nervous.
Sure. If you're addressing a room full of people and not one person speaks up.
Not one person speaks up. Because you've been in the other side. You know the meeting, the minute the meeting's over, everybody goes outside the hallway and it's like, are we really going to do this?
Yeah.
Or don't anybody think that's a silly idea? So, I mean, it's not 100%, but more times than not.
When you share that, you're absolutely right. It's the water cooler talk. It's the gossip that happens beyond the meeting. What I would believe is that there is not an environment built on safety and trust to create clarity and direction through opportunities for people to voice their opinions. And I believe that we get to, as leaders, show up in a way where every team member's voice is heard. They know this. They know their voices are heard, their opinions matter, and their ideas are considered. Offline, you shared a story with me about an idea you had years ago, and there was some internal dialogue that you had with yourself and whether or not to share it, and the struggle that you encountered, and then the aftermath of the entire situation. And I'm trying to kind of beat around the bush to some degree because I want you to share the story, if you don't mind, with our audience, but also talk about the impact of leaders giving their team members the safe space, place, and platform to share their ideas to help a greater cause.
Are we talking about the Eric Leakin story?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. So we're in Iraq in 2006. We've been there 2 months. And the IED threat was pretty significant. And we had just received some electronic countermeasures that we thought was going to defeat the remote use of phones or garage door openers or, remote control toys to detonate. So all that was really left was you could sit there with a hard wire if you were the bad guy and touch the battery. There's not much I can do about that if you're willing to sit there and try to blow me up. But the other was they would bury it in the road and you would drive over it. And I did some research and I thought there was the opportunity to build some devices to push in front of our trucks or anything that's driving down the road and pre-detonate these, obviously not detonate them underneath our vehicles. And I proposed that we had a working group to address the issue because it was significant. I mean, that was the primary cause of casualties on our unit. And immediately, like most ideas, this is why the experts, the explosive ordnance guys, that won't work, General. This is what they'll do. They'll do this. The gunner will get fragmentation. It won't do this. It's blah, 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 blah. And so, I think whenever you have an idea, and people immediately push back, and they always will. Your tendency is, even if you think it's right and you hesitate, you're like, maybe they're right. Maybe it won't work. Maybe we shouldn't do this. I don't want to waste my time. Maybe there's a better way. And then that night after the meeting, we had a casualty report of a young man who was killed by a pressure-initiated IED. His name was Eric Leakin from Du Bois, Indiana. I didn't know it at the time. And I just saw that, and I kind of asked myself, well, what if he had something in front of his truck? I mean, what if he had something? Maybe he'd be alive, or maybe he wouldn't. I didn't know who he was. I didn't even know his name. I just knew his unit, and I'd just been to visit them. And I kind of said, you're afraid of making a decision. You're here. You're in combat. Do your job. Make a call. So we had another meeting, and I said, all right, same thing and same pushback. I go, no, we're going to try this. And we did. And just like I would tell everybody that just like there's a bunch of people in a room that think your idea is bad, there's probably an equal number, maybe even greater number of people who are not as vocal who agree with you, or at least are willing to give it a try.
Yeah.
And that was the case. And so you got 1 week, go build me some stuff to push in front of our trucks. Long story short, it ended up becoming the counter IED roller that kind of became very, very commonplace in Iraq and Afghanistan throughout our time in the Middle East. And I believe, not because of anything I did, just because of efforts of a lot of people, because they refined it, it made it better, it saved countless lives. And I tell that story to people because people hate change. They hate it almost as much as they hate the way things are. And as a leader, if you have an idea or someone gives you an idea or you believe there's an idea that's going to have an effect that's going to make the organization better or solve a problem, there's risk. The risk is, well, doing nothing is a choice. There's a risk to doing nothing. There's a risk to maintaining the status quo. And there's a risk to doing something different. I would say the greatest risk is doing nothing and just being satisfied with the way things are. Because if you've got a problem, there's a reason. And most problems have solutions. So not an easy solution, difficult solution. This was pretty simple. It was just a mechanical device to push in front of the truck. And I'm not an engineer, but I kind of figured it's a farm tool. So in today's world, there's changes constant. Technology, software, artificial intelligence, additive manufacturing, biogenetics, DNA splicing, on and on, the medical field. There's just so much change going on. And, recycling and electric cars, what are we going to do with these batteries? And how are we going to maintain this stuff? And the cars have all this software, how do I fix them? Do I have the right capability? It's not like you're just like a carburetor and an alternator and you got some analog gauges on the dash. And those days are gone unless you're built just doing old cars. So my advice is you have to trust yourself and you have to be willing to take some risk. And you're accountable for that. You can't blame the person who gave you the idea if it didn't work. Because they gave you the idea, you agreed, so now you own it.
Yeah.
You own it. And so there you are. That's what leaders do. They own the responsibility. They're accountable. They're accountable for the decisions they make. And they're accountable for the decisions they don't make.
I want to, before we touch on accountability, I really appreciate the fact that you brought up that word specifically, but I want to acknowledge you to this day wear a bracelet honoring Eric Lakin. Eric Lakin's, it's a memorial bracelet because of the impact that it had on you. And by the way, this is one of many examples of the impact that you also did have on the Marine Corps, because you were immediately trying to take the credit and say, it's not because something I did. I beg to differ. You had the idea, you spoke up, you had the courage, which you shared earlier, the courage and conviction to speak up. And it's likely because someone in leadership, someone in your environment gave you that safe space, place, and platform to at least step up and show up. And so I want to commend you for that. Accountability is a big opportunity in every organization, every industry, and I dare say that even greater in our industry, in the automotive repair industry. How do you create a culture of accountability?
Well, I think it starts with you. You have to accept responsibility for your actions. And if you tell your folk, you get in this kind of this yin and yang of trust and accountability. Well, if I hold you accountable, do I not trust you? No, I trust you. And trust is like a bank account. So over time, if you and I work together, and I ask you to do something and you do it, and it meets the standard and meets the requirement, over time, I don't have to check you. I go, I'm going to check.
Mm-hmm.
One of the old adages in the Marine Corps is to get what you expect, inspect. And so inspections are part of accountability. The unit gets inspected. If you inspect the tool room, all the tools are supposed to be there. I mean, you have to do inspections. You have audits of your business. It's an accountability thing. Is it because you don't trust your CFO? No, it's because you have to have that audit in order to have a good credit rating and for other people to possibly want to use your business. Nobody wants to do business with somebody who doesn't have internal controls and accountability. But there's always this pressure like, well, you're going to come look at me because you don't trust me. But no, I trust you. I mean, and if you're confident in your ability and you've done due diligence and you've done your work, you should welcome, hey, you should come look at my stuff anytime you want. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
I welcome it.
It's quality control.
It's quality control.
Yeah.
And I have to do that. And I've seen time and time again, well, we used to have this really onerous inspection on our supply and maintenance system in the Marine Corps, and it was brutally harsh. It was actually a teaching opportunity we took all these experienced supply maintenance people and they came around and they inspected everything. And it was an opportunity for the younger Marines and for people not versed in that stuff to get trained and learn how the system worked. But it was some serious tough love. And we stopped doing it for a while. It's like, well, we don't need to do this. We're too busy. And I will tell you immediately, our quality control of all our maintenance and all our supply, it degraded over time. So we reinstituted it because it was important. So, people that, because you have an inspection by your higher or even within your internal organization, you should welcome that. At the same time, you should be aware that you have responsibility to uphold the standards and accountability yourself. Now, at the end of the day, if a unit does not have standardization, if they don't meet the standards, they're not accountable, if they don't have internal controls, then the CEO or the manager, they're responsible. Because I guarantee you, the organization has written this stuff all down. I mean, there's no secrets here. Here's the stuff you're supposed to do. You're supposed to check. You're supposed to count. And the military is maybe the greatest organization for that. I mean, because we got tons of things that are very valuable and dangerous, like weapons and ammunition and fuel. Stuff got to be accounted for. It's to be accounted for. And you have to have a process to do that. I'll tell you this story about accountability. So I was in charge of an organization. It was about 2,500 Marines. We were out on the Mojave Desert at Marine Corps Base 29 Palms, and we deploy all these Marines out there to do like a 4-week training exercise. And it's all live fire. We got airplanes, we got tanks, we got artillery. We're shooting all this live ammo. There's Marines driving all over the place. We brought some of our own equipment. We drew equipment from a central issue facility. And at the end of the exercise, we had to turn it all in. And we had to pack up our own stuff and send it back to home station. So I told all the commanders, I said, hey, at the end of the exercise, I want you to come to my office. I'll be over there in my little tent or my little Quonset hut. And I'll sit there at my desk and I want you to come in and tell me I have all my people and my equipment accounted for. And they all nodded. I said, okay. So the third day, the final exercise after a month, it ends about 2:00 in the afternoon. Got all these vehicles and people coming back from all over the base, and they're dropping off their trash. They're turning in their unused ammunition. They're gassing up their vehicles. They're getting ready to, some people are flying home the next day. They got to clean their stuff. They got to make sure, first of all, do I have all my people? Have I recovered everybody from the desert? Because that training there is like 1,000 square miles. And so I'm sitting in my office. I had gone out and flown around. I'd been out there myself. I got in a helicopter. I knew where we had some people in remote areas and went there to look. There's always going to be some vehicles broken down. Hey, we need to go out and help these guys out here at this point. They need a tow, or we got to get our stuff back. And so it usually took till like midnight before all our stuff got back. But people would start coming in late afternoon, early evening, and they would say, to report. And I decided, this is pretty important. And I've told them all that they're going to come in here and report to me. So the first guy comes in and goes, "Sir, I got all my people and equipment accounted for." I said, "Great." I said, "Here's my little notebook. Would you just sign your name to attest that you on this date, your unit, your name, reported that you have all your equipment and people accounted for?"
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he goes, "Can I come back in an hour?" I said, "Absolutely. I'm not going anywhere." So there were a group of them outside, and I could hear him, and he comes out and he goes, "Hey, he's making us sign his book." And then there's silence, and I opened the door and they were all gone. So it's something about putting your name in ink as opposed to just, "Yeah, we're good. I got everybody, sir.
Yeah.
I got all my stuff." Okay. Sign your name. Sign your name. Now, was I being a micromanager? Was it a lack of trust on my behalf that made me do that? Most of these guys I'd never worked with before. We'd worked together for 4 weeks, and we'd develop a certain level of trust. Some of them I'd known. They were from my parent unit. I'd known them a long time, but it didn't matter. I had told them how important this was, particularly people, because we're not leaving anybody here, and we're going to get all our stuff. And I'd asked them repeatedly over the course of the exercise, "Do you have all your stuff? Do you have all your stuff?" And they, "Oh yeah, we're good. We're good. We got everything." So final day, like, sign the book. So my staff thought it was hilarious. So it kind of became, if anybody would say something kind of off the wall or like, some extreme, like, "Well, we're going to do this," and then somebody would pipe up like, "Sign the book, man.
Yeah. Take ownership.
Sign the book. You're so confident it's going to work. Sign the book." So I just, at that particular point in time, not like I hadn't emphasized it. No, I didn't tell them they were going to have to give me ink. But there's something about ink. That's your name. It's a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper, but you signed it. And we didn't lose anybody. We had all our stuff. And everybody went home and it was fine.
There's greater gravity to put your name on it.
There is.
And, I appreciate you sharing the story. Even in the training that I do, when I talk about delegation and the practices that we use to implement effective delegation, I talk about following up on the follow through. And it's the idea of, we have a one-on-one. And so let's say I have a one-on-one with you on Tuesday, and our next one-on-one is 2 weeks from Tuesday. But on Thursday of the same week, so just 2 days later, I will follow up on the follow through. So General Neller, we had our one-on-one on Tuesday. Your call to action was to do X, Y, or Z. Tell me, what can I do to help you with that call to action? And I share in training, is this micromanaging? And I'll nod my head. Yes, it is. Do I advocate for this? Do I believe in this? No, I don't. However, when we're trying to create a culture of accountability, early on, you're going to have them put their name on it. You're going to have them sign the book. I would venture to guess that after a few months, after 6 months, after certainly a year, they may not need to sign the book anymore, because you know them, you know their character, y'all are on the same page. But being able to follow up on the follow through, put your name on something, sign the book, that's going to create some accountability. I mentioned character. Earlier you mentioned effort. These two things, effort and character. This ties into what you're going to be speaking about at Tectonic. Can you share with our audience what that is, what they can expect, and why they need to be there?
Well, I believe in the old kind of Greek ideas of honor and virtue, that a person, man or woman, who is both honor and virtue is a person of character, that they keep their word, that they say what they're going to do and then they do it, that they're accountable and they accept responsibility for those things that they don't do, and they admit it. Because everybody already knows. You might as well just admit it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think character is important. And I maybe that's old-fashioned, maybe it's kind of corny, But I think the world would be a better place if we had people who exhibited a better level of character, treated people with dignity and respect, worked hard, were humble, were kind, not soft, fair, worked hard. I mean, there's always somebody that's going to be smarter than you. And the effort thing is, I mean, I like books by Malcolm Gladwell. He talks about, what it takes to be an expert. And I mean, there are a lot of smart people out there. A lot of smart people. Super smart. Not all of them are successful. Not all of them are people you would want to have in your organization. I'd rather have somebody who is, you just got to be smart enough. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but you can make up a lot of and I think most people at a certain age, point of time in your life, you kind of know what you're good at, what you're not good at. But you can, I can't teach you to work hard. And, we all have a certain level of attributes or skills or talents, and those things can get improved, but they only get improved when we work hard at it.
Yeah, that's good.
We work hard at it. We can get stronger, but you got to go to the gym. We can get smarter, but you got to get your nose in the book, or you got to read stuff. Can get healthier, but we've got to do a better job of how we eat and sleep and take care of ourselves. If you're not a good person and you're not, I can't teach you to be a good friend, but I think most people that have character and honor and virtue are generally pretty good friends, because that's kind of the way they live their lives. So I think effort matters. I think in any business, obviously you got people that are working hard, and they may or may not, I don't know what the output is, but they're working hard.
Yeah.
So I worked for a guy in Europe once. He was a German general. And the Germans have a saying, there's 4 types of officers in an organization. The first type is they're lazy and stupid. You find something for them to do that's not too difficult, you just kind of leave them alone. And you've got people that are smart and ambitious. We make them staff officers because they get a lot of work done and they solve a lot of problems. Now we have people that are ambitious and stupid. They're dangerous. You need to get rid of them. And the people that are lazy and smart, we put them in charge.
Help me understand, why is that?
Because they're willing to delegate, and they're smart enough to know who the really smart people are, and they help them. They give them the latitude and the freedom to do the work. Maybe lazy and smart is it's kind of a parody, because the Germans actually have kind of an interesting sense of humor. But I think the big point, and I've read it, people that are stupid and ambitious are really dangerous, because they're more concerned about themselves and not the organization.
And they will drive change.
Not for the right reasons.
That's right, but
not for the right reasons.
Not positive change. I think that the 2 things we can control each and every day in our life is attitude and effort. And I often will share with my own clients this concept, and I'm not ever going to say give 100%, but I'm going to say provide maximum effort, because on the days that we're sick or injured, we simply can't give our 100. But there are plenty of days where we can give 80 and we're giving 60, or there's days that we can give 100 and we give 80. If it's a day that we can give 80, then let's give 80. If we can't give our 100, but we can give 80, let's give 80.
It's hard to give 100% every day, because I want 100% every day. Some days you wake up, you just, I don't feel like giving 100% today.
Yeah.
All I can give you 80? Now, if you wake up and you have the ability to give 100 and you only give them 60, there's probably a reason. I always found, if there were people in an organization that weren't meeting what I considered to be their capability, or they just seemed like maybe they perform really well and all of a sudden their performance had degraded, that doesn't happen without a reason. Or people are just kind of difficult. And my advice would be bring them in one-on-one and go hey, why are you being so difficult? You were doing this and now you seem unhappy. Or you seem dissatisfied. Is there something going on I need to know about? And there probably is. Now, whether they'll tell you or not, my guess is it probably involves either something inside their family, something internal, or somebody between you and them who's making their life difficult.
But you're seeking first to understand, then be understood.
Yeah.
You know, when we began this interview, you talked about getting the right people. You didn't say these words, but it was like getting the right people on the bus. So in the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, he talks about getting the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus. And you just mentioned 4 types of leaders. I think that when we get to bring the right people on the bus, we're hiring our CIA team members, people who are coachable, intelligent, and who have the right attitude. And much like what you alluded to earlier, I'm not necessarily meaning like book smart intelligent. I'm talking about emotional intelligence. I believe in the concept of hiring values before skill set, values before talent. What are your thoughts on getting the right people on the bus? Like when you said, because that's an important piece to the puzzle that you referenced earlier. How do we get the right people on the bus?
You know, I think some people are better at recognizing that than others. You know, it's, you know, don't confuse enthusiasm for capability. There are a lot of people out there that are hoorah, yeah, I can, and then the more quiet person they don't seem too motivated, but maybe maybe that's just their style.
Yeah.
So, you know, enthusiasm's great. I think that's something I need to write me more positive, outwardly enthusiastic, but that's just not my personality. I'm kind of I call myself an optimistic pessimist.
Okay.
So you know what the advantage of being a pessimist is?
What's that?
You're never disappointed, and sometimes you're right.
Okay. I like that.
But I work for all different kinds of people. Some that were just tremendous optimists, smart, but they were smart that they knew the people they had working for them were going to take up and do, and they gave them the right things to do because they knew that wasn't their thing, their strong suit. And I've also, I try, sometimes people will come in and they're new and they bring this group of people with them. I think that's very dangerous. In the Marine Corps, you go to a new unit and there's already a group of people there and you come in as the leader or the commander and then the staff is there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you have to have enough confidence that the Marine Corps has done a good job of training these people and what you assess them, figure out what they're good at, what they're not good at. Maybe you move people around. But you love the one you're that you're with, so to speak. I mean, this is your team.
Yeah.
I think whenever you bring in a group of people that have been around you a long time, I think it makes you comfortable, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the right outcome. That's just my personal opinion.
Sure.
So on the, finding the right people, I mean, you have to, a lot of times there's opportunities, for education, for extra development, and you need to send those people to give them those opportunities. But then they're not there on the day-to-day basis. So like, well, I don't want Josh to leave because I really need Josh to finish this product. But he really ought to go to this training event because I know he's going to come back in 2 weeks and he's going to be all motivated. And he's worked hard. He deserves a break. He deserves this opportunity. I'm going to send Joe because Joe's kind of doing nothing and I can't really afford to let Josh leave right now. Mm-hmm. That's a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a mistake. You have to develop your talent. You got to develop your talent. You get it. And people know who deserves the opportunities. Sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes promotion boards in the Marine Corps got it wrong.
But they still made the decision.
They still made a decision.
Like you said.
And so you've got the tools that you have, and it is what it is. And so you move forward. And there's always going to be attrition. And I still today, I'm sure like you, I read the news every day. It just boggles my mind that every week you read about some CEO or senior person in an organization who does something just incredibly, usually not anything to do with their competence in their field, but a character thing.
Yeah.
Character thing. And so you made it to the peak of your profession. you're making all this money and you can't prevent yourself from doing X, then obviously we were mistaken. Should have never put you in that position because you couldn't handle it.
Earlier, you mentioned one of the greatest pieces of feedback or advice you received was don't ever change. I'm going to ask you to share one more piece of advice. One of the, perhaps the greatest advice you have ever received from a coach or a mentor outside of that one. How would you answer that?
Well, let me just qualify. I don't think he meant don't ever change. I think he said don't ever stop, being kind of a contrarian. I think that's what he meant.
Continue to
because you got to change.
Way.
I mean, I'm not the same person I was even then, and how I view things and how I view people and how I view the world, because you're constantly growing. You're constantly, if you're not developing, studying, learning, and the world's changing so rapidly, I think you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
What's the best advice I ever got? That's tough. I can't really think of any particular thing. The Marine Corps is like being in a leadership school all day long. People will tell you, learn your business, trust your subordinates, take care of the Marines. And take care of the Marines doesn't mean give them stuff. It means like make sure they have the right tools, they have the right training, that you're holding them accountable, that they're physically fit, that they know how to do their job. Plan your work your plan to get what you inspect. Don't forget your family. So, I think there's not really, I think that thing that I mentioned about don't change or continue to be curious. Don't be satisfied with the way things are.
You just routed off a number of different pieces of advice you can give. If you were going to give one piece of advice to our listening audience, just something that's been heavy on your heart, a message you want to share, what would you share with our audience?
At the end of the day, those that you work with are going to judge you by what they perceive to believe you're concerned for their welfare. And people ask me when I was getting ready to retire, they go, what do you want your legacy to be? And usually it'll be some act or something or some decision or some policy. And to me, I'm more concerned about, what the Marines would say. History's going to write what they're going to write. But I think the thing that was most important to me is I wanted the Marines to believe that I gave a crap.
Yeah.
Because I think the worst thing anybody could say about you as a leader is he or she doesn't care about me. Now, it may or may not be true, but if the perception is that you're not about the team and not about them, leadership to me is every day you're in a certain level of self-denial. Because you got to be disciplined, you got to be focused. And so I think my advice is make sure your people believe that you care about them.
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And there's power in connection. General Neller, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Can't wait to listen and watch your keynote at Tectonic again in Houston, Texas, April 9th through the 11th. We'll see you there, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, absolutely.
Be safe.
And thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Limitless Leadership Podcast. As you know, we look to transform our leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great day. Merry Christmas. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.